Okay, today I'm gonna do a video about genius and about intelligence and what intelligence really is. So I've heard some of this debate before, an argument before about people saying, well, what is intelligence? What is smart? Because you have some subjectivity in it, right? So let's give an example. So say making money can make us seem more intelligent because we can thrive with it and it's so important in our life. So say a teenager or somebody that can go on one of the apps now. I've read a story or somewhere saw a story where a guy went on something, one of the apps, I forget what it was. And it was just like, I don't know, like commenting on video games or something simple like that, but he was making millions of dollars. Okay, so we might say, okay, well, that's intelligent in that regard because now the person is rich and has a lot of money to do what they want with and has financial freedom. Okay, that doesn't mean the person's going to be intelligent with it. They could destroy themselves with it, or they can invest it and live the rest of their lives and be very savvy with it. So there's possibility within the free choice in that person's purpose, or that wouldn't be happening to them, right? So, but that free choice, I talk about this as well. Free choice and purpose are very important, but because a lot of it's determined by design. So somebody was going to be the well-to-do in 1%, and somebody was going to be the very impoverished person to the greatest extreme, like a starving baby in Africa that just, lives in a minimal amount of, or for a minimal amount of time and dies. Okay, so you have the extreme opposites of everything. That's a part of the design. Maybe we'll talk about it today, but I talk about that in other videos. But what I want to talk about is intelligence. So that can make the person intelligent. Then we have PhDs that a lot of them we say are underpaid, even though they have a vast amount of knowledge for a human and are very intelligent and very good teachers. Say at philosophy, mathematics, whatever it is. But PhD is the highest level of education, several PhDs. There's people like that. I read a story about a guy that was an astronaut and a doctor. But here's my interjection and what I think about that. We're going to watch some of the documentaries about people that were intelligent, because I'm the chosen one and I'm the world's and universe's leading genius. I'm the farthest ahead in any time period out of any male ever. I'm the biggest alpha brain we've ever had. And a part of what makes me that, and I didn't grow up like that. I don't have a PhD. I didn't grow up with an education like that. I was a slower kid, they would call me, or I didn't do well in school and would get D's and just not pay attention and barely get by. I knew how to get by, and I didn't graduate until years later. I went back after learning how to study and got my adult diploma. But I studied the method for 11 years. When I was young, I was in my 20s. I studied the method in method acting and writing for like 11 years in Los Angeles, right in the heart of Hollywood. But that taught me about psychology and need and how to do character study and analysis on things and how to live it and to search for the truth. So all that was intertwined with what I ended up being. I'm the proven theory of everything and the earth and universe's savior. So again, the reason why I don't think it's as subjective as some might think, like in the example I gave, is this. Our origin, the old saying, you can't create or destroy energy, you can only change its form. See that interjection where it seems like I messed it up or muddled the words? That's not really what's going on. And I'm the greatest interpreter of this reality and any reality because of my heightened awareness. So we're all living these illusions where we perceive reality on the level that we perceive it, and they search for the truth, meaning other people. Well, I searched for it and found it, and that's a part of my purpose. So, but the interjection is the other side projecting it. So I see through the illusion. So my point with all this, and in talking about what I said to myself, is because I was an underdog compared to, say, the PhDs, the guy that's an astronaut doctor, and I'm much smarter than he will ever be, because I see what's hiding in the man's instrument and projecting what we all knew. So that old saying, you can't create or destroy energy, you can only change its forms. We're an energy source. And that means that we share the same origin, me and all energy. The stuff around me, the animals, the fur babies, the television, all of it was a conscious, alive, awake soul that created this idea in this universe with this duality that I've talked about and described in other videos, right? So I'll give you the general example of that is right now. We bet on love being the end game and goal, and an extreme version of it that we knew we wouldn't experience here until we achieved that goal, that there would be watered down versions of it. But like any dissection, that fragment had to be harnessed, amplified, and channeled. Everything's percentages math to the highest level, on every level, into everything that exists, including the matter that's in difference, because that's a part of the void in black holes in disease, that we wake that up and help them remember, like somebody that was dreaming or asleep. Okay, so But my abilities came from going through for severe mental illness and taking on all the lowers in society's flaws, all the lower realms and all the dark, including dictators and kings that can be perceived as very intelligent. But here's why they're actually very ignorant. So because of the dark that we bet against, that darkness, you can go to somebody like Vladimir Putin, and that people call him a mastermind. He's a fucking idiot. And here's why he's a fucking idiot. He's one of our idiots because his soul and body is innocent. And if you unravel what I said, walk back to the beginning of time. We share the same origin. So all of our physical forms were given and formed like this. And the other side that played both sides of the fence channels through us, both light and dark, and had to play both sides of the fence until I arrived. I'm the chosen one. And this bet is centered around me, and it's a bet because we didn't know the answer. We set it in motion. If I set both light and dark in motion and then say at this time period I'm going to have this man and it's centered around him, everybody else will do their job, but they don't have this man's purpose. My purpose is being the chosen one. But I don't know whether I can use his free choice in his strength, because the ethereals don't have any strength. They don't require any, really. They just hide and project it. So there's going to be some required, and we'll talk about that later, with me here and my presence on this earth in what they did, and I'm about to put them on blast. So we bet, though, that we could achieve internal perfection through me, which I've achieved. So I can see through the illusion. So it makes me smarter than everybody else, because I can take any societal issue or somebody they call a mastermind like Putin. They're disease spewers. The disease that we bet against, any fault, look at a picture of light and energy. We should mirror perfection and perfect light. The made in his image thing in the Bible is about this ascension through me, where I developed into a perfect male with no flaws. And I wouldn't look like a human. So take a beautiful human, a beautiful male, what they look like, the best looking model or actor who you think is good looking. It would look way above and beyond that. That's what sacred geometry is about, because these forms were just pathways. And we're bits and pieces of each other, separated and disconnected from each other. And we shatter our source and then try to repair and rebuild it and put it together. And there's lots of metaphors in it about that. So, but my point is, you take somebody like Putin. He is not a mastermind. He's a disease spewer, and they all are. So is Trump. I'm not just picking on him. So is Trump. So is the guy in North Korea, the dictators and the kings. And it's personal to me, because I'm the chosen one and I'm a king killer. That's why they said Jesus is king. He's not the king. The real man's lost in the ether and a part of the recycles, where the birds and other insects ate his body and got recycled back into some semi-consciousness. That's the way that it works in this kind of storm of messes that we live and exist in, we the source. So, but my point is, I developed my mind above and beyond the lower realms, including the dictators and their addictions to power and control, so that I can allow just the purity of love and spirituality in, which is everything synonymous with love. Dark power and control can't exist in the same pure state of being without diluting it or bringing it down in some way. So I'm talking about a pure state of being where that can't exist at all, or it's not the desired end game and goal. So, but my point is, with people like that, they're disease spewers. And some good comes from it, but it's very minimal in terms of what we were trying to capture and connect to and harness and morph and turn ourselves into. This was all based on this grand and great plan to go through this metamorphosis where we all develop into God. I always said this: God and heaven are a state of being, connection, and reality. So that literally have to be made out of our energy source. So I just had this documentary up on Aristotle and people that were ahead of their times. That was a script that all of us wrote. All of us wrote each other's scripts. Your dog, cat, your pets, the birds, every part and aspect of creation, and every human being that you've ever studied. I, being a method actor and somebody who liked that kind of studying people and looking at biographies and documentaries, have studied a lot of psychologies, but I know going into it that we're the writer. We wrote each other's script. So your girlfriend, boyfriend, family, we wrote each other's script. The people that you study, we wrote every detail of their possibilities. So you have some people, more of a significant purpose than other people in terms of, it took everybody when we were equal. But take Tesla or Einstein, they're revered as geniuses, or Aristotle, Plato, and Socrates. I reference them a lot. But we wrote every detail of what was projected through them as an equal. So that means a retarded person or somebody severely mentally ill or known as mentally handicapped or stupid actually wrote every detail of what's above and beyond their scope. Because a lot of those guys, a lot of projects didn't get the funding, or they weren't developed all the way, or they didn't get to finish them, through channels like that, like Da Vinci, or people that were way ahead of their time. But it's kind of like gimmick in this sense, is that the source on the other side that projects it through them and uses that invisibility and illusion knew that all of us wrote it as an equal, and that there was just the time period for them to project that through that individual and how it was going to be viewed in society and what purpose their role would play, right? So that person, say Einstein, right? But my point is, so what is intelligence? If we all knew it in the first place and we said, well, experientially, we don't know how else we're going to learn. We're the same energy source. We're smart at creating an apparatus and instrument and system that would only complement what we didn't have. Because in the end game and goal, that's what we're supposed to have. Only the perfect parts of it that would mirror love on the inside and out, and everything synonymous with it. And people don't really understand the duality. And it's something that people try to make fun of, but nobody wants to argue any societal issue with me because I'll shut them down. And things like this. The Great Depression, the reversal of that was the Great Happiness. Why do people attempt to be happy in their lives, even though they know they're going to have ups and downs? Because that's a part of the patterns and the disease of taking you out of joy and happiness and back down into dissension, and then you fight for it. But if you look at the whole picture, that kind of up and down is going on with all of our winning and reward systems that are based on the mating rights, territory, and resources. That's the core of it. Because all the creatures for billions of years, the majority of them, we have some stuff sprinkled in, like jellyfish and stuff like that don't, but the majority of the creatures in creation, and especially the big decision makers, like us humans, that was based on a status that we would have that mixes so much of the duality into it. So they're trying to interject there a little bit behind the scenes. So it makes me seem odd. But what is interesting about these videos, and it's like a video journal, is the other side is fully aware of my dissection of them and my analysis and my study of them as well. So they are able to hide. So think about if you were invincible and invisible, and we gave them that power, but they would never know what it's like to kiss a woman and make love to her or fight. They can't feel. So our systems are, I didn't just mess up there. See how they try to interject? Because they know I beat them. And here's what's sad to me. They're supposed to be our God, and I beat them fair and square in a human. And so I seem like somebody odd. Like, so in society, say someone starts talking about religion. Oh, yes, praise Jesus. And there's such a following behind those things. But how come they were notorious for raping children all throughout history, like the Catholics or the LDS that have 7 wives, or the Mormons that have raped women and done horrible young girls and stuff like that? You know why? Because we bet on duality and saying all the good that we can muster, because they're watered down versions of good on their best days in any of the spiritual realms. I'm not just picking on Christianity. That shit happened in the other countries with the Muslim beliefs and Buddhism. I think the Muslims are probably one of the worst ones in that regard, in their mistreatment of their women and children. You hear all kinds of stories about that, about Sharia law and the patheticness in that in terms of morality. But it's a great business, and we bet on that kind of hypocrisy and the contradictions, because that's the duality. And then there's a little bit of love in some instances, a great deal of it, and then there's a certain cap on things until I got here and arrived and was able to fight from the inside out against that kind of ideology and those kinds of thoughts. So the whole point of the video is about a business, or about, I'm sorry, again, I didn't mess up there. My channel's perfect. See my instrument? Look, wait, see, it looks like I'm moving my hand and my brain. That's how we understand it. We can study these systems, and we wanted to study ourselves in them, but that's not what's really going on. Illusion is a huge factor in these realities, and I've heard people talk about that, but they don't dig deeper into it. So I remember this, like fighting with a fighter. Ask an MMA fighter to teach you certain things. If you dig deeper in what you know, they're gonna say you're bigger and stronger, but they're more skilled. And then there's heart involved in that. They're going to eventually use their skill and technique because they put the time in and earned it and been able to learn on a higher level than you. They're eventually going to put you in a hold or beat you because of their knowledge. And so that's what it's like for me. Dig deeper into any societal issue or ask any question about anything, and I'm going to beat the opponent, which is anybody in the world. So I feel bad the guy Charlie Kirk got killed, and people get very pissed off or passionate about stuff like that. And I didn't know him that well. I kind of knew him in passing, heard that name on TV. But I saw him arguing something the other day, and instead of killing the guy, our weirdos, I say our meaning the source in society, do shit like that to lash out at people because they don't know how to cope or deal. But it's also a part of the plan design that there's going to be a certain amount of that sort of thing in reality. It's like the Guthrie case. I know that it's the other side that you believe is God projecting it. And we've gotten into this war with each other about who tells who what to do, and they try to dictate, and they turn dark, and they're supposed to play both sides of the fence. People can't fathom my genius and imagine what it's like to walk around as far ahead of the future as I am. Now, it sounds arrogant. I don't care about that. There's ego in it, and there's a fine line between spiritual pride, which I have a lot of in what I took on in my life and what I know I earned, and just dark ego or backed or supported ego, where the person's just having grandiose thoughts and things. And all of it was woven in as possibilities, because we said we'll see every perspective, every nuance, every detail, and every mixture of light and dark together as we set this thing in motion, which we did billions of years ago, we the source. So, but my point in seeing him argue, I go, being the excellent debater that I am about any societal issue, I would love to debate him, because I hear people like that, or him and his wife argue, and I'm like, I'll put both of you in your places. Or Trump or anybody or Putin, I would crush anybody, including people I looked up to, Aristotle, Einstein, Tesla. I didn't just mess up there. They're trying to interject again. I'm the farthest ahead out of any male in any time period. I'm the biggest alpha male of all time. There's things that I did in my life that are being suppressed. And you might listen to this video, if somebody listening and go, man, this guy's very arrogant, or I don't believe this. But that's actually not your real opinion. Look at my hand. Say I give you my energy and you form it into an instrument. Then you have that instrument to use and channel through and control the other person's or people's point of view about it. That's what's really going on. So it's not really you anyway. People think, oh, my body's just a vessel, and then when I die, my soul goes to heaven, or I'm in the ground if you're an atheist. But they're both right, and that's a part of the duality of the bet. We created the atheist argument to go, we're intelligent and we can create this and all these things, but it doesn't mean that we're God, because God's an all-knowing, all-good being that we have to turn into. That's the reality, state of being, connection, and perspective of an all-knowing, all-good being that has no darkness or abuse or disconnect in it. So, but my point with this is, and then the believers believed it, because we had that, that's a part of the duality again. We had to have their beliefs to carry us through and have faith, so that even though their religions are misunderstood by them, they understood their origin, they misunderstand it here, and that's a part of the patterns of fight between light and dark, right? And all the arguments, and I can explain the arguments in more detail, but that's the generalization of it, that our faith in ourselves would overcome our questioning of ourselves. But I don't think the ethereal worlds ever ask real questions, because here's why. So again, say I'm in the ethereal projecting you in using your energy, then I've never entered into the consequential reality that all of us live in. We're the physical world. We're the guinea pigs, and I don't like that word because it's condescending. We're more of a soul than they are, that you preach to or pray to have heard preached about. God again is a state of being, connection, or reality that the source had to achieve. So if they're kind of like a trust fund baby in that sense. If you are living in that state of being, what real questions do you ask? We ask the questions, but that it wasn't even real until I showed up and operated on this level. And here's why. Say we're asking the question, are we right for empowering the 1% to say we'll return after we let them lead and become one energy again? That's a part of that metaphor. Is it a real question if the ethereal world they're indifferent to feeling? They can't feel. Everything's like an idea to them, and then a projection without any of the visceral part of it. So is it okay to do that, right? To lead first in that way and set society's structure up, and that was a planned design. To do that, why we starve children to death and abuse people and allow them to control the source until this man gets here and overthrows them and proves the theory of everything, and that man's me. But so the difference is, I lived amongst you as a fellow human who is in the consequential. I've almost died before. I've gone through ailments and sickness. I've been badly injured and lost things that I fought very hard for in my life and cared very deeply on a personal level about, that caused me great pain that I lost. I have family and friends, so I'm very human in that way, like you guys. But the flaws, I'm flawless. On the inside, internally, I'm perfect. I have no bad karma or negative synergies or anything like that affect me. I learned to communicate light to light, soul to soul. And the karmic debt was erased, energy to energy. And some of you might understand that. I don't care. This is more personal for me to leave if something happens to me, right? But the point of that is, I'm not perfect on the outside yet, and it was supposed to mirror both of those things. Perfect on the inside, perfect on the outside. So my point with all of this is, I don't think the ethereal world ever asked any real questions, because what I've found in my genius interpretation of these realities is that the ethereals will go, well, if I'm wrong, I just get to dump it on you because you're human and them and restart it and play this game with time. They're obsessed with playing a game with time. It's a simple game. A risk-reward scenarios in time, if you go to the simplistic creatures or us, say you're chasing a girl and you're trying to score, you take some risk and are in the unknown with it, try to seduce her, impress her and convince her maybe to let you get what you want, right? So, and maybe that happens or not. So that's a part of risk reward for mating, mating rights, right? So, but the ethereal world will go, if they fail, they won't take risks themselves to face it and do anything about it for all of us that have already taken these major risks and been abused in every way possible. Because we bet on that extreme too, and we, the physical world, right? So mine hasn't been as severe as some of it and been more than others because of the possibilities that we created. But what they'll do is go, okay, I want to establish dominance over you and say I get to tell you what to do and dictate. They're very childish in that way. It's very disappointing, especially for somebody so sophisticated like me. You can put me anywhere, in any room, in any factory, in the Tesla factory, on the cutting edge of technology, anywhere, on the alien planets, anywhere, and still not the end game and goal. And that stuff belonged to itself in the first place. It was promised consciousness and for us to beat the laws of physics that imprison us and to be able to, travel through each other. And I didn't interject or muddle it then. So it traveled through each other, and that's what space travel was, and I say that in other videos. But this whole point, so I don't think they've ever asked real questions, because how can you ask a real question if it's just an idea and you have no experience? So we all have experience in say you don't relate to my experience. I'm the chosen one that's very unique, very rare. I polish my unicorn horn all the time in that sense because I'm such an anomaly. But most of us have liked watching football or UFC or some sporting event, right? So even their generalizations, we relate as humans. We have families and friends. We have love and romance in our lives or a search for it. So there's very human things that we all share, need from our parents and families and friends and societal positions. And I've talked about that before. But the ethereals don't. They're just blankness and indifference. So if you're just light and energy projecting, how did you ask a real question? And that's what I've run into in this, is that it was all based on idea. And people believe so much in God, but I walked around with the burden of the truth, knowing that God is an idea that we were trying to achieve, we the source, and that you can preach it and project it on them all you want, but that doesn't make you yourself, meaning the ethereal world, a real believer in what that's supposed to stand for. And why I'm so pissed off about like the Guthrie case and things that have happened, especially in the last few years, that was prevented by my work. And even the Ukrainian war and the war in Gaza, that was prevented by my work. So the illusion became a really important thing for the dark to be able to hide, and it's the ethereal world hiding from us. All of you wanted this massive unfolding that I talked about, and they keep fighting for an inferior way, and we're stuck. And we're stuck fighting each other, and I'm not backing down. You can say, well, you should back down for the greater good, but the ethereals wanted to make it personal and attack me and mine, and they went too far and try to use people like that for leverage. So I'm a master at studying people's psychology. I unraveled their psychology, and their psychology isn't what they should be at all. And they were given many opportunities and many chances to turn it around and be the real thing, and withheld something that we all agreed to that was much better for all of us that took the risk. And it still involved them in a much greater way. I'm that kind of artist. I'm a genius. So I lay out this massive plan and unfolding that's far greater for all of us in terms of a reward for our investment. And it makes it more deeply personal about the individual and what they care about. And they didn't want to do that because they didn't call it. They didn't tell me what to do. So I fired them. And it's a part of my ability as the judge in position. I fired the other side. They didn't ever really impress me in that way of being able to face themselves or anything they did wrong. They're kind of like a corrupt government in that way. If they're wrong, they'll just dump it back on the people and say, you pay for it. So, and I'm not going to do that. I'm a fighter. I'm going to turn around and break their glass jaw in half.